We are live. It is Empire State of Baseball on this Monday, December the 4th, 2023. We're airing on Twitch, X, and YouTube, and powered by StreamYard on this episode 69. Nice. All right. Well, we were without Corey Favs tonight. Had to deal with a personal matter. I saw you shaking your head, Joe. But Joe, how we doing today on this Monday and the kickoff to the winter meetings?
We are doing well. Listen, I mean, the hot stove has been lukewarm, to say the least. We still have almost, I think it's all but one top 10 free agent has gone off the board, has not come off the board. So, it's a weird, slow, monotonous grind, but, December's here. Christmas time is upon us. And, maybe Santa will bring us a couple gifts in the form of top players in the next few weeks.
It almost seemed like the stove was heating, like going into the meetings. There was some movement. There was some kind of stuff going on. You thought that would get the ball rolling, but it looks like we're slowed down. And I know I just read something before we got on the air here that Ohtani doesn't plan to sign during the winter meetings. At least that was one thing. I don't know how true that is, but if that's the case, that's, the biggest free agent is not going to be signing. So we'll see. We'll see what comes out of the next few days.
It's been a late fall of speculation. Joe mentioned most of the top free agents obviously is still available. I think the only one in reference, I think you were alluding to Aaron Nola signing his deal with the Phillies. But other than that, we've seen some weird deals. The Braves involved in some interesting trades over the last couple of weeks. Jared Kelenic, the famous member of the Edwin Diaz Robinson Cano deal from a few years back, headed back to the National League East to torment the Mets for the near future. But that was an interesting deal there. And I guess before we get into our local teams there, Joe, do you have a comment on that specific deal with Jared Kelenic going to the Braves?
Listen, Kelenic, first of all, the original trade, the discussion's over. The Mets won that trade that was so highly publicized. At the end of the day, the Mets have the best or one of the best two closers in the game of baseball on their team. And Kelenic is now going on his third team. But it is one of those trades that is going to come back to haunt the Mets simply for the fact I see it now. I see Kelenic being a Met killer. If he does nothing else in his career, if he's a career platoon outfielder, those platoon stats are going to be pumped up by his games against the Mets. And we are on a collision course for an Edwin Diaz, Jared Kelenic critical situation against each other. And it just seems like the Mets are going to end up on the short end of the stick on that one. But listen, at the end of the day, the Mariners want to dump some salary. They're looking to make moves. They're looking to improve offensively. Kelenic had a good rebound year for the first time, but he got hurt a little bit. And he's an unreliable source. They are looking to contend for a division. They're not going to keep a player that may or may not be there for them. So they obviously used him to dump some value. They're going to replace him with somebody, whether it's a guy like Soto, whether it's a guy like
whoa.
Randy.
We're not bringing that juju.
Randy Arozarena might be another. I think the Mariners are looking for improvement there, and I don't think that they felt comfortable trying to improve that position while Jared Kelenic was still on the roster.
Rich, do you think Soto's going to wear 22 with the Yankees? Do you think they've been saving it for him for that specific reason? Or what number do you think
apparently they've been saving 18 for Yamamoto. They've been saving 24 for Bellinger.
Listen, guys, that is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard of in my life. I mean, I there are a lot of ridiculous things, but the fact that the Yankees turned around and said we've been holding a number out of rotation for 2 years just so we could have a shot at signing a Japanese pit.
I think, Joe, How true do we know that is? Because listen, at the end of the day, the Yankees have had Japanese imports before wear that number 18, and there's been an 18 prior to that player signing. I don't think that would have mattered. The Yankees could have gave out that number 18 at some point last year, and I got to check if they did. But for them to not bring in, if Yamamoto's not coming over because of a number, that's ridiculous. Obviously, he's going to go to the team that's going to pay him the most money. But even if just throwing it out there, Oswald Peraza was wearing number 18. Number 18 was going to go to Yamamoto in a potential signing at the end of the day. I don't know how true I believe this report, because I know Andy Martino reported on it. So
unless Aaron Judge is
silly.
wearing 18, if you sign a guy for $200 million, chances are he's going to have his choice of number, unless that individual who is wearing it is more expensive than him. It was just the way it came out. You could tell it was like the Yankees PR team like looked up what number Yamamoto's been wearing since high school. Like it was so weird. It was like, this is the biggest crock of nonsense I've ever heard.
Chestnut checkers. We'll teach you one day, Joe.
Hey, listen, if Yamamoto is going to a team simply based on the number that's available, it's not going to be that. You know what? If two offers are the exact same in the exact same city, if the Mets and Yankees have identical offers,
there we go. He's already backtracking. He's already making excuses why Uncle Stevie couldn't make the deal happen.
It makes no sense. It makes no sense. And Joe, back to that number 18 again. That's the number most Japanese aces do wear. Yeah. I don't even think it has anything to do with going back to his early days of being a kid and throwing a baseball. 18 is usually awarded to the ace of your staff. It is common culture in Japan. I was looking at the history of the number 18, and before Hiroki Kuroda came on in 2012, Andrew Jones in 2011 wore number 18. Before Tanaka came on in 2015, Kuroda wore number 18 the year before. So they've never had a history of saving that number specifically. So again, I don't know if we're just reaching for a story here on the Andy Martino end of things, but if there's any truth to it, it's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. There's no reason to hold a number for an entire year when you know that picture's not going to be posted.
I'm just trying to think which number jersey I want to ask Santa for. Do I want to ask for 18 or do I ask for 22? You know, we're getting close. Santa and his elves are putting stuff together, and
no.
We don't have to ask him too late. So I'm just trying to decide: is it 18 or 22 for the trade?
The Yamamoto thing is the most fascinating free agent, even more so than Ohtani, because at the end of the day, Ohtani's going to do what Ohtani wants to do. The Yamamoto thing is fascinating because almost every team in baseball is interested, and more importantly, you have the Mets and Yankees going after the first free agent for the first time since I think I heard Dave Winfield in the 1980s. And it was just
that's couldn't afford free agents for a long time.
But the script has flipped a little bit. You know, it used to be.
Wait a minute. Actually, I think even sooner than that, Joe, and the Mets won this end of the bargaining. But when Carlos Beltran was a free agent prior to his stint with the Mets, the Yankees were sought after for him. The Yankees wanted to bring in Beltran as a potential replacement for Bernie Williams. Excuse me?
As a trade, or when he got traded?
As a signing. When he hit free agency.
I don't remember how involved they were.
MLB trade rumors archives to see if they
trade rumors archives.
See if they have.
We didn't even get to the lineup. Hang on, before we even dive more into Mets Yankee stuff in our first Empire Express, our lineup card is presented by Roback, and I know Thomas with the nice spot, taking a nice walk earlier today with that exact hoodie I believe that he is wearing right now. Did a great job. So Thomas, for our viewers who missed that great promo on your Instagram, what do you got to say about our friends over at Roback?
Listen, everyone, Roback just ended their one of two sales of the year. They do two sales every year as a longtime customer. They do their Cyber Monday sale. They do a sale in the summer for the longest day of the year. It's the only two times their stuff goes on sale. If you want a discount on any of the Roback products, your best way of doing it is signing up the new email account using promo code TWASPL15 to get 15% off your order. We're heading into, it's getting cold up today. So it is hoodie season. Q-Zips, they have some new fleeces that look real comfortable. Want to get my hands on one of them. Some vests. And they also have a lot of really cool women's things too. If you're looking for some gifts for someone special under the tree this holiday season. So head over to rhoback.com. Use promo code TWASPL15 for 15% off your first order.
I think that is a great gift to hand out for this holiday season. Rhoback Q-Zip. I think that's a great gift for Santa Claus to leave underneath the tree. So Rhoback, thanks for that, Thomas. And our lineup card is presented by Rhoback. And we're going to get things started off with the Empire Express, our latest news and notes on the Mets and Yankees. The Mets had a pair of signings the other day that cracked headlines. More importantly, Luis Severino jumping across town to fill out a
crack Joe's brain.
That's going to be fun to listen to that. And Joey Wendell also joining the New York Metropolitans as a utility infielder. We'll get more into that in a little bit. And of course, we're going to talk more about the Yamamoto sweepstakes there. For the Yankees, it's all about the focus on this potential Juan Soto deal. What could a realistic trade package look like? I've taken a crack at the Soto trade package numerous times now on this show, offline. But given what the Yankees and Padres are talking, what the press are putting out, maybe there's a realistic deal that we haven't touched on yet. And we're going to get into that shortly. So with the Empire Express, let's get into it and talk about the New York Metropolitans. Luis Severino joins the squad, 1 year, $13 million. Joe, what was your initial reaction?
So, listen, I know it's
Attic. Did you go out and buy champagne? You ready to win the NL East?
I know it's 1 year, right? I get that. I get that. And I get the money is not a focus for Steve Cohen. But I dislike this move. I dislike.
Joe doesn't like winning, so
I disliked it on multiple levels. For a few reasons, really. The money itself is not the issue. For me, the money it shows you a different thing when I look at it. It's not just the number against the luxury tax. It's not what you spend out of pocket. It's what that says, and it's what that says as far as security in the rotation. $13 million secures you that spot in the rotation for the first half of the year. If Severino comes out and has a 10.5 ERA in April, that he's staying. He's not moving to the bullpen. He's not getting DFA'd. And to me, Severino on two fronts, on a health front and on a performance front based on this last year, has not earned a guaranteed spot in a rotation for a team that is looking to contend. So that is listen, if it was 6 or 7 million, I'd be a lot more comfortable because you can move that person into a mop-up role. But when you're paying $13 million for a player, you cannot do that. That person has that rotation spot for the first half of the year, no matter their performance. And that's the part that concerns me, is that I think Severino's best days are behind him. It's very rare that a player comes back from both injuries and underperformance. And that's a hard thing to rehabilitate because usually you're fighting against one while the other. Tyler Glasnow is a perfect example of a guy who, very similar to Severino, doesn't pitch much. But what happens with Glasnow, his performance hasn't dropped off due to injuries. And that's my concern mainly with Severino. The second part to this is I think the Mets and Yankees, I think it is a bad idea to bring in a reclamation project from the other team to your team, being the Mets and Yankees. Simply
being the Mets. The Mets have done this from the Yankees now. How many times?
Simply, Betances was the last. Simply from the fact that it's not fair to the player, because the fan base naturally has less patience for that player. The Mets fan has watched the Yankee fan go through it with Severino the past few years, whether it's injuries at first and now underperformance last year, and they are going to feed off of what the Yankee fan felt the year before. Whereas if he goes to Kansas City, if he goes to Detroit or someplace like that, he doesn't have that expectation built in. But the Met fan has seen Severino at his best, and he's also seen Severino at his worst, and he knows what the Yankee fan feels, and they're going to bring that to the ballpark. The Mets fan is not going to have the patience to stay with Severino in 2 months. If he stinks after April, he's getting booed. They're not going to be patient with that. So that's my thing. That's my gut feeling. Yes, I know it's a 1-year deal. Yes, I know they're looking for a low risk, high reward option, but I think it's a lot more than low risk because, like I said, the performance was not there last year, and I think that inherently brings more risk.
A couple of notes on this. When I look at the money for the $13 million, you got to think if Severino was going to be, if Severino was offered a qualifying offer from the Yankees after a good season, he probably would have made somewhere excess of $20 million. So you're looking at a guy who, if on a good day, might have made a little bit over $15 million. So I guess you save in that sort of regard, especially if Severino can somehow find it.
I think we lost Rich. Thomas, to you.
Yeah, to me. I was trying to do a little bit of
One of the deals made by the Cardinals about a few weeks ago with Kyle Gibson and Lance. Am I back? Okay, I'm back. I look at two. So I don't know where did I last leave off? I'm sorry.
Like almost right away.
Almost right away. Okay. The thing with Severino is I look at the 2 prove-it deals that we saw the Cardinals offer from Lance Lynn and Kyle Gibson. 2 1-year, $10 million deals. And I think that's pretty much the standard benchmark for what a prove-it deal should be for a veteran pitcher. And that's why I would have thought a deal for Luis Severino would have been, especially on the West Coast for a team that hasn't really seen him. But for a team on the East Coast that's in the same market that's seen this guy. And I laugh because in the second point I was going to make, I laugh because we did this segment throughout the entire year for the New York Strike Exchange, our Bulls and the Bears of the year. Joe, let me ask you a question. Who is the most common New York Mets starting pitcher that was on the Bear list on a weekly basis?
The Mets starting pitcher? Probably Peterson.
Carrasco.
No. It's Carlos Carrasco, a pitcher who's in the twilight of his career, who's been injury prone, who can't get out of the second inning. And what do the Mets just do? They essentially re-signed Carlos Carrasco in the form of Luis Severino. So I don't understand what the thinking was. When you have to fill out rotation spots, you need to go with guys who have a rubber arm. Joe talked about Kyle Gibson a couple of weeks ago, who was a perfect candidate for that job. By the Mets signing Luis Severino, what they essentially have to do now is sign another pitcher to be ready to go just in case Severino cannot perform. And that's what they did here. Huge mistake by the Mets organization to bring on Severino, despite being a prove-it deal. Tom?
This is also this is a massive year for Luis Severino. He needs to make this work. He is a guy who is going to get paid $13 million this year. And if he has a good year, he will be in the market for a $75, $80 million contract in the off season, a 4-year deal. If he's bad, he's a spring training invite guy. He need, and I know a lot of his thing has been injury recently, and a lot of that can be out of your hands. So it's hard to hate a guy or boo a guy because he's injured. But this is a big year for him, and I know he has a lot of up and down with Yankee fans. I think there's a lot of good memories Yankee fans should have of Luis Severino, and he will be someone that I'll be rooting for in the Mets to do well because I like him. Again, he's had a lot of bad luck, and then that kind of snowballed into some bad performances. But I would really like to see him do well. He's an exciting guy. The Sevy roar coming off the mound is something I wish we would have saw more in the last couple of years. But when he gets into it, he is a fun watch, and I hope the best for Severino across town.
So I'm gonna bring this because I really don't have much to say on Joey Wendell. I actually think Wendell was a good pickup for the Mets. It's a good utility guy, good veteran utility player. Fills out third base well. If I think at this point Brett Beatty's still the third base plan. Joe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if he's not, then you have a veteran guy who can step into that position for the New York Mets. Now, the point I was going to make about Yamamoto linking Severino to Yamamoto. Let's say the Mets do win the Yamamoto sweepstakes.
Yeah,
your rotation is now Kodai.
What if Severino wants to wear 18?
As I was saying, that's going to be an issue. Kodai Senga, Yamamoto, Quintana, Severino, and let's just say Joey Lucchesi. The Mets aren't done with that rotation. No. What piece would be missing out of a rotation that consists of those guys?
Yeah, I think with Quintana's help being a question mark, the Lucchese's, McGill, Peterson's not going to be ready to pitch. I think they need a solid guy who can eat, 175 innings, 180 innings. And that's why I liked Gibson. Even Lance Lynn. Listen, we give Lance Lynn a lot of crap. This past year was bad. He pitches 180 innings every single year. I mean, he is a rubber arm. Whether they're going to be top quality is another question. And that's something that you can't say with Severino, obviously. So I would like to see a guy like maybe a Jordan Montgomery. I don't know if they would be willing to spend that much money. You could go the route where it's like a Seth Lugo and Eduardo Rodriguez, like something in that nature where that guy's he's not a flamethrower. He's not going to throw 99. He's not going to blow guys away. But at the end of the day, he's going to pitch 175 innings and lock down that rotation spot and not disappear for 2 months at a time. And I think that's what the Mets need.
The good thing is we're going to be getting into, I think, talking about some of those guys and potential landing spots later in the show. So I think some of those names might pop up as Met options when we talk about this rotation.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see that play out. Obviously, we're going to have more on Yamamoto later. On the Yankees end, their biggest acquisition was Oscar Gonzalez over the last week. So guy who can store on the 40-man, 25 years old, though, and loves SpongeBob. That is the biggest takeaway. He loves SpongeBob SquarePants. So, listen, Yankees want to have some fun, enjoyable stuff there. But Juan Soto you're in a talkative mood today, Thomas. Juan Soto is the talk of the town, though, as far as the rumors, and they continue to swirl. The Yankees were the front line of acquiring him. Then it was the Blue Jays. Now it's a little bit more back on the Yankees. You got every beat writer throwing out different trade packages. The main thing that we're hearing is that the Yankees' initial offer of just sending over a few pitchers was countered by a 7-player package, which included some combination of Clark Schmidt, Drew Thorpe, Chase Hampton, Michael King, and other players like Johnny Brito. I also saw Randy Vasquez. I even saw Kyle Higashioka thrown in the mix. They have a need for another veteran catcher.
They're gonna move that. They're going to move a catcher. The Yankees have like 6 catchers on the 40-man roster. So one of them is going in this trade to the Padres. So that's going to be in there.
I'm hearing a lot of stuff right now, but Joe, as you sit right here, and I know you have a team in mind that can jump in and really change the game during these Soto trade rumors. What are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Yeah, I mean, listen, from the Yankee perspective, they've been in on Soto day one. They understand that Soto has the ability to transform their offense into a one-trick pony or a two-trick pony with Judge and Torres, basically into a more cohesive unit. He gets on base at a 400% clip. He's got power. He's a lefty. He's an outfielder. He checks every offensive box the Yankees are looking for at this particular moment. And given the trade package that I saw on the table, I know pitching's hard to come by, but at the end of the day, if the 2 names not in this trade or the 3 names not in this trade are not Volpe, Dominguez, and Pereira, the Yankees got to find a way to get it done. Because those 3 guys, if those guys are not included in the trade, there should be very, very little reason you can't pull the trigger on that trade. Because at the end of the day, there's nobody that the Yankees are going to give up that is ever going to be as good as Juan Soto. And I understand that's oversimplifying it, but
there's a lot I think we're leaving out here, though. One, the Padres quite literally cannot afford to keep Juan Soto. They have to trade him or someone who's making a large chunk of money, and the rest of the guys on that roster have no trade clauses. That doesn't mean they can't be traded. It just means it's a little more difficult and there's a lot more years of money attached to them. 2, what the Padres want, the Yankees have. The Padres want a several pitchers who have some major league experience or emerging major league pitchers to fill out their rotation that are cheap, controllable for future years. And the Yankees also shouldn't negotiate against themselves. The Yankees know they have what the Padres want. And yes, the Padres have what the Yankees want, but that doesn't mean the Yankees should just give everything up. I know Yankee fans and Rich and I included have very low thoughts on Brian Cashman, but his job is not to give is for the Padres to say, well, we want 7 guys, and him to say, fine, here's the 7 guys. they do need to
At the
negotiate.
same-
It's being done
But
in
Michael
the
King
public
cannot
because of
prevent you from getting Juan Soto. That's the point. I understand there's going to be multiple iterations of it, but Michael King, Clark Schmidt, Thorpe, none of these guys can be the guy that stops you from getting Juan Soto.
No, but you also shouldn't just pay the most amount. You should try to retain. The Yankees have to fill out a rotation too. They need.
I understand that.
They need arms as well. I mean, they're counting at this point on Schmidt and King to pitch next year. And again, that Juan Soto is a different talent. It was a different beast. But that doesn't mean you should just pay what the Padres are asking. This is just being done in the public.
And most likely, and the Padres know this, most likely they're not going to include both Schmidt and King in the same deal because they know, like Tom just mentioned, the Yankees have a rotation to fill out. You trade both those guys somehow, some way. Now you're missing two pieces in your rotation. So you have to figure out filling that spot.
Yamamoto's only one guy. He only can fill one of those spots.
Better. I keep saying, if it means the better of King and Schmidt, whatever gets it done, peace. Yeah. See ya. Brandon wants. And my fear... And again, back on Cashman, the biggest thing that he's the biggest criticism he's gotten over the last couple of years is he likes the prospect hunt, and he's kind of got away. He actually got away from moving on from the guys when he knew it was time to move on from a guy like a Jesus Montero. He did it over the last few years. He hasn't really done much of that. I think the last name that he moved at the right time was Justice Sheffield. But if we're thinking back, like the Chance Adams and the Miguel Andujars and the Clint Frazier's, he held on to these guys for too long, and he wasn't properly.
He moved Caprillion. He moved Caprillion in
the Oakland deal. I feel like that's going to happen. I feel like the part of him is going to happen. Caprillion went in the Gray deal. I think you're right.
Yeah, the Gray deal. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
it's not a great deal.
Yeah, but I think he just got hurt. I think that they announced he had some surgery, so
I think so. Yeah, but again, that's at the time it was.
So
he was the first round. He was first round draft pick. So, yeah, I mean, I think like most things out there, and you see like the truth to somewhere in the middle. The Yankees sound like they want to offer Schmidt or King, Hampton or Thorpe.
Or Hampton.
One more guy, and then probably a catcher. The Padres reportedly want 7 guys, so it's probably going to come down somewhere in the middle there. That's
like I said, in a way, it's the amount of players for a rental and a fringe outfielder. That's like the only thing. But if it means bringing in this freaking guy, and as Joe said, if you're not talking Volpe or Dominguez or Spencer Jones, which I think Joe forgot to mention, and Everson Perez. Get this deal done. I'm actually kind of shocked that in this trade for Soto, who would take up an outfield spot, who you're hoping can stay put with this team for the long term after the year is over, you would think they'd try to offer up one of their young outfielders that they would eventually not have a spot for on this team.
Maybe Padres. I mean, the Padres also might not want them. The Padres might. Their reports have consistently been young starting pitching and a catcher. So if that's what they want, I mean, the Yankees can offer outfielders as many outfielders as they want. If they don't, that's not what they're interested in. It's not what they're interested in.
If the Yankees are in a bad spot, because if they don't get this deal done, there's almost nothing that they can do. They could sign Cody Bellinger, but from the sound of what Cody Bellinger wants, it's $200+ million. That's gonna, that's a dangerous contract. If you're
removing him from my offseason agenda.
If you're giving Cody Bellinger $150 million, fine. But if you're giving him $250 million, that's a very dangerous contract for that player.
Crazy.
The Yankees are kind of caught in a bad position, and this is a weird. Like I think the Mariners are now primed to go after Soto. I think it's exactly what they need. I think to pair Soto with Julio Rodriguez changes the dynamic of the AL West for this year. Whether or not the Mariners can re-sign him is another question. But at the end of the day, that's going to be that's a game changer offensively for them. They have young, controllable starting pitching. Rumor is they can look to move a guy like Logan Gilbert, who would be probably the best starter that they could acquire in a deal for Soto. They even have guys like Emerson Hancock in the minor leagues. They have Harry Ford, who's a young catching prospect. He's their number 2.
Bryce Miller, Brian Wu. Right. They have quality minor league players that are ready to take on the major league level. Right. I actually don't even think they need to trade Gilbert as a headliner to get a deal done. It would be that would be the closing argument. Like
Yeah.
if we're neck and neck, Yankees Mariners, they're like Logan Gilbert.
I don't know if the Yankees. I mean, granted, the Padres can do whatever they want. I think the Yankees have a good sense that the Padres want to do business. They're just doing a lot of negotiating in the press right now, and I think cooler heads hopefully will prevail in the next coming days. Another go on, Jeff.
So my concern is if the Yankees lost out on Soto, if somebody outbid the Yankees on Soto or anything like that, I think that's a big red flag for me at how the Yankees are operating, because this is a guy that George certainly, and we know Hal's not George, that we know in George's era, he would not have let go. He would have found a way to get the deal done, full stop. So then my question to the Yankees would be, did you come short of doing the deal because you're nervous that you can't re-sign him and you didn't want to give up the prospect, which would be very strange for the Yankees, because there is not a player I can remember that the Yankees have brought in and said, this is our guy. I said this with Judge too. This is our guy. We're committed to re-sign him. Have they ever had a player walk away after he's been a Yankee when they wanted to re-sign him? And Soto obviously wants to test free agency. If you bring Soto in and you are the Yankees and you are committed to re-signing him, I would imagine you'd feel pretty good about that, because the Yankees have never lost that kind of player on a rental deal.
They haven't.
It never happened in their history.
I want to bring up a couple other points that I am just echoing. Those of you who might listen to Talking Yanks BBD, the producer of the program, he made up a couple of really good points about the Soto trade that I think just also benefit the fact that, hey, you're not re-signing him when you trade for him. One of those big, if you do trade for him and he leaves in the offseason, you would attach the qualifying offer to him. Mm-hmm. You would get a first round draft pick. 2, if you don't sign him, if you don't trade for him now and you sign, let's say he goes to the Mariners and you sign him from there, you have to give up a first round draft pick. Yeah. So that's just a piece you're giving up for him.
Yes.
And then the third one he brought up, which I thought was good, is listen, like Soto's contract is going to be what? $400 something million, 10 years, 12, 13, 14 years. He's going to be 26 years old. It would be really good to figure out if he enjoys being a Yankee this year before you commit $500 million to him in the next 14 years.
I mean,
this trade, the Yankees have to make it. I'm not ready to get too critical of the Yankees front office in this case until it doesn't happen, because again, this is how these things go. If it doesn't happen, I think that could be a bit of a last straw for any Yankee fans holding out hope with Brian Cashman. That hey, if you weren't willing to make this deal, if Michael King was the one holding this up, then we gotta be done.
And at the same time, and I'll close this point with this. I don't blame the Padres for going all in on a 7-player for 2 offer. No. I mean, that's a starting offer for arguably a top 5 player in baseball. I mean, it's fair for them to make that offer, and I think it's equally fair for the Yankees to reject that offer. The art of negotiation. There's going to be so much back and forth on this that I don't even know if a deal with Soto is even going to get done this week. In the middle of winter meetings. But it'll be an interesting story to follow, and we'll be on it. And I'm sure when the Soto news happens, and if it happens on the Yankees end, hell, even if it happens on the Mets end, we'll be here to cover it on a breaking episode of Empire State of Baseball. We might even just do a Soto episode regardless of where he goes. I mean, who knows? It's so relevant to the New York teams. Anyway, before we get into our predictions for the top free agents and trade targets show, what do you have on our social media with Instagram and X?
Yes, you can follow us on both Instagram and X. You can follow at Empire State of Baseball on Instagram. You can follow Corey, who is in here, at Corey Fabs, myself at JR Pugs, Rich at Rich Shea Rivera, and Tom at T Waspel, all on Instagram for all our multimedia content, postings, preview for the upcoming episodes, etc. You can also join us on X. We have over 2,500 followers, so thank you to all those on X who follow us. You can follow us at ESB Podcast on X, Corey at G Gory, myself at JR Pugs, Rich at Rich J Rivera, and Tom at T Waspel, all on X. Get our instant reaction when trades and sign-ins happen. and anything else that comes to our mind on a particular day. I think I got into a debate about Babe Ruth the other day not making a D3 team, so that was an interesting
Oh
one
my
that got some
goodness.
feedback.
You got into a Jared Carabas, who's a
Yeah.
Red Sox zealot and a half. Actually, I had good rapport with Jared Carabas the other day over a Friday Night SmackDown tweet he commented back on, and then Joe goes for the gut, defending Babe Ruth of all people. I didn't think I'd ever see the day.
I mean, Jared is
that was fun to
he's.
watch.
I mean, I feel like you can set a clock to him putting the tweet out about how Babe Ruth is overrated. He knows he gets engagement, he gets clicks, he gets comments, he gets everything, retweets. So I don't know. The guy knows what he's doing.
I feel like there's a lot of
it's a dumb point.
It's a dumb point, and like these people think like if you take Babe Ruth out of 1923, that like you've taken a time machine and a claw and just stuck him from one field to another. And it's like, no, if Babe Ruth was born in 1990 and had all the training equipment and all the, he's not swinging a 40-ounce bat.
I mean, listen, if you went the other way and you took Cookie Carrasco from last year and you transported him to 1923, he would be the greatest pitcher on the face of the earth. Like it's just how things evolve. If you want to go that way, it's how it.
And it's funny.
Granted, you want to be able to pitch against Babe Ruth.
Everybody says that, if you put Mike Trout in the 20s, he'd be the greatest player ever. Until he gets hurt and realizes there's no therapy equipment to rub out that hamstring of his.
They give him penicillin.
Right. What are you doing then?
Right.
So
I think it's the biggest waste of time argument on social media. The what ifs. If you want to go back on like certain moments in baseball, if they would have happened differently and talking about what would have happened after, it would have been cool. But putting a player, 2 centuries before they were even born, in a previous time period, it's a weird take. I never engaged in that. But Joe did with Jared, so you can check that out on X if you want to be entertained. But we do have some winter meetings to talk of, as we talked about earlier. It's been slow winter meetings this first Monday. We were kind of hoping that a big story would break so we could have it for you and react to it live on the show. And maybe, we still got 20 plus minutes left to show here, so anything can change. But for now, we do have a list of free agents and trade targets that are still available per se. And we're going to discuss where we think these guys are going to go. Now, let's bring up our first set of players. We have 20 players in total. And of course, Corey Fab is unfortunately not here today, but he did leave his predictions as well. Quickly, though, we got Randy Arozarena. He's been talked about in some certain trade rumors. All of us still have him staying in Tampa Bay. Tom, the latest on Randy Arozarena is Tampa is listening on offers, but I guess based on the predictions here, we're thinking it's more just to listen.
I mean, listen, Tampa listens to offers on everyone, so I wouldn't get too tied into that. He'll eventually be traded because, the Rays probably won't want to re-sign him, although I guess depending on what happens with, I don't know how the Wander Franco situation is going to end up with the money they guaranteed. Maybe if that gets voided, is there a way to kind of give that to Arozarena? I don't know. But until they figure that out, I could see him moving at some point. But how much longer does he have control with the Rays?
That's a good question.
That we're gonna have
2 more years at least.
I feel like they're big, like 2-year remaining guys, like that. They as a team, like that's when they want to move on.
Earliest free agency 2027.
So I think next year is the Randy Arozarena trade.
He is a Boris client. I think
even then, though, that's still very early to make those engagements. But yeah. Tampa's done this too, and it's almost a frustrating thing about Tampa. And I'll get more into that when we talk about Glasnow. But we also have the same deal with Corbin Burns, also talked about in certain rumors here. Joe, I don't know if it was you or I think it was Corey that had him connected to a Mets possible trade in their OSA. But Corbin Burns, you have staying as a Milwaukee Brewer.
Yeah, I think the Mets. I think the Mets have committed to stay into the prospects. Obviously, he's got the David Stearns connection now with the Mets. That's why I would think that the Mets would be tied to him. But at the end of the day, I don't think they're giving up any of their top prospects this year unless somebody falls in their lap.
The Brewers also might be really bitter about how that whole situation went,
correct.
and they might not want to trade with the Mets. Like, let's be honest. Like, this whole thing, the way that went and how like weird it was in the public, what's left of the Brewers front office, they might say, "Listen, we're not dealing with the Mets because of how all this went down."
I don't know. I listen. At the end of the day, the Mets are the ones who should have been bitter. The owner of the Brewers never let Stearns talk to the Mets and kind of delayed this process. But at the end of the day, you got to remember the front office was all mentored by David Stearns. So there is a connection there. Whether you say that's a positive or negative remains to be seen. But I can see Burns is kind of one of these guys, and my same deal with Shane Bieber, where the team goes into the season and that's a deadline type deal. I don't necessarily think either team is going to be looked to deal them in the offseason, because at the end of the day, these teams have to sell tickets a little bit this year. They got to make sure, and selling your ace before the season starts usually is a bad idea. I can look to see both of them kind of move mid-season, and get a prospect package that way.
I feel the exact same way about these guys. A lot of the pitchers on the market, I think maybe one of them moves. We'll get to that guy in a little bit, but I think the Burnses, the Biebers, there's another one out there I'm blanking on right now who's not Glass now. There's another one though. I feel like. Anyway, Cease, yeah, I think those are guys are more trade. I think they if they're out of it, they'll be moved at the deadline.
On the chalkboard, you did allude to one of those pitchers. So Shane Bieber, Corey, and Joe have him staying in Cleveland. I got him going to the Chicago Cubs, almost kind of replacing Marcus Stroman in that rotation. I think having a guy like that who's a frontline guy to pair with Justin Steele would make that a more formidable rotation. But Tom's got him going, pairing up with Max Fried over in Atlanta.
I mean, listen, the Braves are just like they've made so many weird moves. As of late, that I wonder if they're trying to accumulate some kind of, or make space and accumulate players to make a bigger deal, like a deal, the deal before the deal. So listen, it would strengthen what they have. Their starting pitching had a lot of issues right at the end of the year. Joe, you'd be more of an expert on that than I would, and he would be a guy that would step in. I think he's also a 2-year remaining guy, if I remember. So they would have him, pair him with Fried and Strider, and it's a 3-headed monster. I don't think any team would want to roll into, especially with that offense.
Yeah, the Cubs make a lot of sense. I think the Braves would make a lot of sense too. My concern is the Braves' ability to offer top prospects at this particular point. They've kind of shortened themselves with prospects over the last few years. Again, that's one of those things. I can see him moving midseason. He had kind of a weird year last year. His metrics weren't as good as some of his other numbers. He's looked like he's declined. So teams might want to see what he has left in the tank while he's on Cleveland before they pony up, and then they can assess how much he can impact the pennant race after the deadline.
Joe is on the Bellinger to the Yankees here, and obviously we just discussed in a previous bit about the high cost it might take to bring in Cody Bellinger, but you've always said he's the perfect fit for Yankee Stadium.
Yeah, I think he fits the Yankee team. And again, we talk about Soto, fit in the Yankee team as well. But Bellinger can play 3 or 4 positions. If you count all 3 outfield spots, he can play first base in a pinch if Rizzo goes down. And we know Rizzo's not a young man anymore. He's got a lefty pull swing. He can abuse that porch in Yankee Stadium. I think he is tailor-made to Yankee Stadium. The question is, if you're getting Soto and you're going to go out and get Bellinger as well, I think Gleyber Torres would not be on the team as a result. I can also see them passing on Soto and saying, you know what, we can just sign Bellinger, not give up any of our prospects, and roll with it that way. I think it's hard not to give Bellinger a serious consideration if you're the Yankees. He's so perfectly made for what they need right now. It really feels like a really good fit.
I don't think they're paying that much money for Bellinger.
They might not.
If it's in that 225, 250 range, I don't think they'd be willing to go that high. That's a lot for a big risk.
Yeah, Bellinger has the feeling of a guy who's going to sign super late. I have a feeling he's going to be the sort of guy that waits out a lot of this market, try to get his value up, and you might see a late January signing for Cody. He might be the last really good free agent up there.
Good. He's the best. I mean, other than Ohtani, he's the best free agent hitter on the market. So
I think Soto and Ohtani have to resolve before him because he is he's the last guy standing. And if a team is looking for a bat that missed out on one of those other two, they're going to hop in on the Bellinger train when they might not have been on there to begin with. So the Yankees, prime example, if the Mariners step in and steal Soto away from the Yankees, I could see the Yankees turn around to option number 2 and say, okay, now we need Bellinger because there is no way to get a bat of that caliber without signing Bellinger.
I got Belly going back to the Cubs, Thomas and Corey to the Giants, but we do have to move on to the next grid. I don't know if Tom, you had an additional comment, and Cody, if we can move on.
Not much, no. We can move on.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for let us move the show along. And here we go. We got Dylan Cease, Matt Chapman, Tyler Glasnow, and Lourdes Gurriel. We see a few Mets logos in there. So Joe has Glasnow and Gurriel ended up in New York Med. What would a trade look like for Tyler Glasnow in the New York Med end?
Yeah. So my thing with Glasnow is it's so hard to pick a value because he's an ace level talent that undeniable. When he pitches, he's an ace level talent. The problem is the when part. It's very similar to Luis Severino, except the performance is not declined at all. If I'm the Mets, I'm looking and saying, hey, listen, I got to pay this guy $25 million. We don't know how much he's going to pitch. You need to offer up a solution. So in my hypothetical trade scenario, I think a 1-for-1 for a guy like Ronnie Mauricio would fit the bill because the Rays now have a shortstop question with Wander Franco. Mauricio is a guy who can go right in and play shortstop for them. The Mets need a pitcher. They're going to go with quantity over quality, it looks like, and just throw as many arms as possible. So I think something like that could work. Mauricio obviously is a question mark at third base. You got McNeil and Lindor shoring up the middle of the infield. You got Luis Angel Acuna Jr., who's going to be the future second baseman. That kind of leaves Mauricio out in the winds a little bit, and he hasn't proved he can play third base. So I think that's a really good idea for the Mets. If they can get him at the right price, I would not give up more than one top 10 prospect for Glasnow. If it's beyond that, you'd have to walk away.
Matt, Tom, you have the same two players going to Chicago. So the Cubs coming off of Cody Bellinger and replacing an outfielder with Lourdes Gurriel, coming off a decent year with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Glasnow going into a rotation spot again, paired up with a Justin Steele. So Cubs having a big offseason on your end.
Yeah, I think they're a team that seems like they want to make a move to take that next step after being down for a couple years. And if they do lose Bellinger, I think they're going to want to, they're gonna, not that Gurriel is a replacement for Bellinger, but he's a quality bat you can put in your lineup. And Glasnow is a huge upside. He's if healthy, he's going to be a top 5 Cy Young vote guy. He's absolutely filthy when he's healthy. And I know that's a big if with him, but I think a team like, the Cubs are going to want to take that risk and see if they make it work. And if not, again, like Joe said, I think you have to give up a decent amount for Glasnow because it's 2 years. Although he is getting paid, he's not on a normal arbitration schedule. They kind of bought him out, so it's like $5 million this year and it's $25 million next year. So it's not like you're getting him for the cheap. So I think that does make things a little more complicated. But the Cubs can afford that, so I could see him going there.
The one other player I want to comment on this grid right now. I mean, Chapman, the Mariners, the Giants, those two are definitely most linked. The Blue Jays would be a surprise. I think that could be a guy if the Jays don't shoot for the stars and bring in Ohtani or get the trade done with Soto. Chapman could be a guy that they go back to. He's already used to playing there. But I want to talk on Dylan Cease because his market seems to be heating up. And funny enough, two of the teams that were mentioned earlier as teams that are going to be engaged on him. The Braves and the Orioles are up top there. But Thomas, you have Dylan Cease staying in Chicago for the time being.
Yeah, he is 2 years left of arbitration, so he is a cheaper option than a than a Tyler Glasnow, and he's someone who I could see them possibly moving at the deadline. I think it depends. There's a lot of these starting pitchers out on the market right now. I don't think all of them are going to move. Some of them, there's only going to be so many teams looking to trade, a few top prospects to get guys. And I think Cease could be a guy who maybe just misses out. I think he's possibly would cost the most. I don't know if you guys would agree between Bieber, Glasnow. Again, I'm blanking on the
probably just due to the years of control left and the fact that he's so young. He probably would. And in this scenario, I have him going to the Braves, and he
doesn't have the injury history that the other guys have.
And I think the
Burns would be a big get. I mean, I don't think the Brewers are not going to cheap it out on Corbin Burns.
Oh no. Well, 1 year left on the deal is a factor. I mean, he is a rental. Pitchers are kind of fickle when you're paying for a rental for a pitcher. You have that injury risk that you pay, and he gets hurt in April. It's and you paid for nothing. But with Cease, I think there's an idea that you get him off one of the worst teams in baseball, one of the worst offenses in baseball, and you bring him to the best offense in baseball. I think that there's an idea that Alex Anthopoulos would be all over. I think that's something that he would do. That's a very astute move that you would predict for him. Again, I worry about the Braves' prospect capital and an ability to get that kind of deal done. Maybe Jared Kelenic is an interest to Chicago where he can go into the outfield and be there for the next 5 years and work his value back up on that kind of team. But at the end of the day, I think Cease is a very appealing option for them.
I love it for my O's, as Rich is proposing there. I think that is. I think I might have even suggested that at the trade deadline that they go after Cease.
I believe you did, and I think that's where I drew that inspiration from, Thomas. Because I remember we did talk about a deal like that. For the Orioles, listen, I have another guy that's going to go there too. But I think when we talk about trade capital, I think the Orioles are arguably one of the best teams that have the most trade capital to give for a big time pitcher. And for them, listen, Dylan Cease is a season removed from a 2.20 ERA over 32 games pitched. So he would be in an Orioles rotation. He'd be the youngest old guy. But I think what the Orioles need is a pitcher who's pitched in big games, who's a veteran pitcher, who I have to pair with Dylan Cease later on. But I think Cease would be a great compliment to who I have in mind later. So we'll get there in a few. But we have the next chart here. Josh Hader. Thomas and I on the same page, having him go to the Texas Rangers. That does seem like a good fit there. I mean, the Rangers, World Series champion, but didn't really have that locked down ninth inning guy. Joe, I know you want to get into Chapman.
I disagree with that. I thought they managed their bullpen excellently. I mean, Bochy's an astute guy. His name is escaping me in the back end of the bullpen.
I think that might be the issue. Josh Boers was the guy who got the last 3 outs, I believe.
Right, but Clark was there.
Clark is their guy. Yeah,
Clark. Chapman.
My thing is, I like the Phillies for him, and we talked about this. The Phillies have built a team of guys that fit the Philadelphia mentality. Is there anybody who fits that Philadelphia mentality better on the free agent market than Josh Hader? I mean, that's a Philly guy. If you think of how you build a team, and they rolled in with Craig Kimbrell and Sir Anthony Dominguez, this is a Philly team that is desperate for a lockdown, fear in your eyes closer that looks like he's pitching, from the middle of the freaking staple in Independence Hall.
He's losing
it. I think he is a perfect Philly.
I agree. I actually almost had him going to the Phillies.
I
I
can see
agree
it.
with that.
I mean, I think it's some of like the electric relievers they've had back in the day, like Brad Lidge and Jonathan Papelbon,
Billy
like guys
Wagner.
that gosh, Hader, Billy Wagner, yes. So Hader is definitely in that tier of closer. It's a good. I would say that is definitely a good fit there,
Mhm.
Joe. Even Corey with the Cubs as well. So look, Hader could fill out a bunch of spots. We've talked about the closer role and how the elite closer is kind of done and gone. There's a lot of different ways managers are managing bullpens nowadays. Hader is like one of the last like good closers available. You know, you talk about the Emmanuel Clase and Diaz when healthy and Felix Bautista when healthy, but Hader is definitely in that class. Teoscar Hernandez, we kind of had across the board. I mean, this is a guy who could probably, he could fill out arguably all 30 rosters, whether it's a quarter outfield or DH spot. Clayton Kershaw, we all collectively have him going back to the Dodgers, and why not? I think it's going to be another 1 year kind of deal for Kershaw. And then JD Martinez, I'll make the note on JD. We all have him going in different destinations. Thomas, you do have JD going to the New York Mets, which I'm sure Joe wouldn't be too mad about.
I think it was Joe or Corey had been part of their offseason agendas.
Corey,
yeah. So that's kind of where I got the inspiration from it. I think he, again, as a full-time DH, a guy who can hit, and he's not going to really play the field much, but I think that'd be a good fit for the Mets, a good piece to kind of add to fortify that offense. When it's kind of like Joe or Rich, when you were saying, and you heard the Cease thing, you said that makes sense. I think when Corey said JD Martinez to the Mets, I thought like that to me makes some sense.
Yeah, I now that I think about it, I probably shouldn't have put the Dodgers because they might have another DH by the end of this. But at the end of the day, usually if you have such a good rebound season, and this is the thing with Cody Bellinger as well, you don't want to leave the place that you had that rebound, especially if they're a good team.
Fair enough.
Because you've found yourself, you're comfortable there, you've rejuvenated yourself, but at the end of the day, I could see a lot of teams being interested. Again, similar situation to where Bellinger, where I think those other guys have to go off the board first, and then they say, okay, JD Martinez is one of the top 2 or 3 guys left on the board. That's a good place to go. For a need for a year or 2 years.
Yeah, and I said Texas Rangers, and I could easily flip the destinations of Teoscar Hernandez and JD Martinez because it would just make sense. JD Martinez, familiar with the Red Sox, kind of like kept this rejuvenation of his career going with Boston. So a place of familiarity. And when we're talking about that other DH, Joe, that the Dodgers would more have their eyes on, we obviously are talking about Shohei Ohtani, which across the board we all believe is going to the Los Angeles Dodgers. Tom, there's been reports that Ohtani's decision might not come during the winter meetings, which you had mentioned earlier today. I don't know. Dodgers just seems like the perfect destination for Shohei, but is there a team that would be the B to Los Angeles that wouldn't surprise you?
I think there could be options, and that's because I included in my message to you, Rich. I think Ohtani, I've said this on the show previously, is going to sign a bigger version of the Carlos Correa deal that he originally signed with the Twins. He wants to sign a 2 or 3 year with opt-outs after each year kind of deal, because ultimately Shohei Ohtani wants a $600 million contract. And with the complete uncertainty with his elbow, he cannot get a $600 million contract right now. At this point, he is one of the best power hitters in baseball. He's a DH, and he maybe will pitch again. If he pitches again, is a starter like the way he was before, he was worth $700 million. He's 2 elite players in one. But if he's not, and I think even that I've seen some things floated out there that he could be a closer or a reliever. I think that's so much messier because you'd have to figure out when you get him warmed up. What if he's coming up 4th in the lineup? Do you not warm up? I think that would be a nightmare to manage. So I think the Dodgers make the most sense. But ultimately, I think he's going to want a deal that he can get opt-outs in. And if that comes from whoever, I think he would take it. I think the Dodgers would be willing to do that regardless. That's why I think he makes the most sense there. And I think everyone is kind of on that bandwagon as well.
Again, looking at some Met logos here, Corey, Rich, I'm rich. Jesus. Corey, Tom, and I have Montgomery going to Texas and staying put with the Rangers rotation, which he was great with during the postseason, which he won a World Series with. However, Joseph has him signing up with the New York Mets. So Jordan Montgomery headed to the Mets, and this I would think is a rotation that would still include Yamamoto, correct?
Yes, yeah. I think this is the Mets looking to get quality guaranteed innings in the middle of their rotation that they desperately need right now. Listen, Montgomery's certainly comfortable in Texas. I cannot see with Seager, with Semien, with DeGrom, with a year left to Scherzer. I don't know if Texas has that kind of money for another pitcher right now. They still got Gray on the books. That's a lot of, they got a lot of guys there right now. And to guarantee, 4 or 5 years to Jordan Montgomery, I don't think they have the space to do that over the next few years. So I see the Mets getting involved with it. They know he can handle New York. He was a Yankee. So I think that's an appealing option. And listen, I like the other two options. I like one of the other options. I don't like Blake Snell, but I like Eduardo Rodriguez as well. I think that would be an option for the Mets. Obviously, Corey and Tom have him going to the Mets. I think if the Mets ended up with either of these two guys, that's a win for the Mets. And I think they're going to be in on both of them.
You said you didn't like Blake Snell. Is it just are you afraid of a regression?
Yeah, the thing with Blake Snell is, and he's had such a strange career. It's a Cy Young followed up by inconsistency for 3 or 4 years, and then a Cy Young. And it's a very, I have a hard time believing that when I pay him for 5-6 years that I'm going to get the consistent factor. I mean, he went the last 4 years averaging 4.25 innings a start. That's not good enough. Not for a guy who's supposed to be an ace. That's my problem with Snell. I got to worry about him playing too much video games and developing carpal tunnel, which he's done in the past. He seems to be a little off or a little out in la-la land once in a while. And for a guy that I'm paying to be my ace, I can't have that. I want my ace to be predictable. I want my ace to pitch 175, 180 innings a year at the minimum, and we know Snell does not do that.
And I have Snell going to Baltimore, and I mentioned earlier that I had the Orioles trading for Cease as well. The biggest thing the Orioles are missing for an 100-plus win ball club that have all the youth in the world is frontline pitching. That's what they were missing. Last year, their biggest move at the trade deadline was acquiring Jack Flaherty. Jack Flaherty, who will probably make money with the Pittsburgh Pirates this offseason as their frontline starter. The Orioles need to make a big statement this offseason and get themselves a frontline pitcher. Snell has been connected to Baltimore, but again, the Orioles got to be willing to pay money. But Thomas, I believe in Birdland. I think they know that if they have money to spend, it's got to go to pitching.
You would think so. You would think that's where they have to improve. And yeah, they, like I said, they have to improve that starting rotation. I have Snell and Erod going to Queens. When Yamamoto is wearing 18 in the Bronx, I think this is two good options to help fill out that rotation. If you go with the top of that rotation of Senga, Erod, and Snell, with Quintana in there, with Severino in the mix, it's not a bad. It's a good rotation. You're bringing the NL Cy Young winner, bringing a guy who's pitched East Coast baseball before with his experience with the Rays.
Lefty heavy rotation.
Yeah, I think it is. Listen, it is, but I think the Mets, if they miss out on Yamamoto, which we'll get to, that I am predicting he will be a Yankee, I think this is the pivot move, and I think you can do a lot worse of a pivot move than the reigning NL Cy Young winner. I think Erod is someone who just fits regardless. Kind of the similar of like the Montgomery move.
And you just alluded to it. So obviously we're going to talk Yamamoto in this last grid, which has a lot of Yankee implications here. And of course, this is what's making this all season exciting with the Yamamoto sweepstakes, because the only predictions are Mets Yankees. And Corey, Joe, and I have Yamamoto going to Mets. I think ultimately that's where he is going to sign. I think Stearns and Cohen are going to put the pressure to bring in Yoshinobu to join Kodai in that rotation. Obviously, Thomas has Yamamoto headed to the Yankees. Joe, just and on a real note, what is the latest that we're hearing with the connections for the Mets and Yamamoto?
Yeah, I think the Mets have been all over him since day one. The rumor is that the Mets are not going to be outbid by anyone. That it essentially is going to come down to whether or not he wants to be a Met. I think at the end of the day, the last dollar on the table is going to be put down by Steve Cohen. 25-year-old ace starting pitchers do not hit free agency. And there's a reason why 20 teams in baseball want to sign Yamamoto. So it's going to be, can Steve Cohen go to a level that scares off everybody else, aside from the one or two, other big market teams, LA, Yankees, Boston, maybe? And is Yamamoto enamored by being a Met or being a Yankee or being a Giant? I think it comes down to his preference. The money is going to be there within probably $20 million. You're probably going to have 3 teams within $20 million. I wouldn't be surprised if Cohen offers the highest amount. But at the same time, if he says, hey, I don't want to go past the
loser,
I want to play at the Giants, at the end of the day, that's up to him. That's why he is a free agent.
All right. Well, we'll stay tuned on the Yamamoto sweepstakes. Obviously, I think we got a lot of Soto out of the way earlier on the show. Mm-hmm. Joe, of course, sticking with the Mariners there. Corey does have him going to the Yankees, and strangely enough, Torres ending up a Padre. So I wonder if that is the same deal. I would think it'd have to be.
You would
but
think
would have loved to have got his comments on that. Thomas sticking with Torres going to the Dodgers, which is consistent to your OSA from a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any smoke to that right now. I think that was more of I could see the fit happening, and then if the Yankees go out and trade for Soto, which is going to come with that $30 million or so price tag, going out and getting a Yamamoto, I do think they're going to want to shed some payroll in some ways, and I think that could be Gleyber. Again,
yeah,
I don't want him gone because he's bad. I just think you could get some pieces back that could help your future, especially if you're trading so many prospects to get Soto.
I got the Yankees keeping him in this scenario. If they land Soto and Bellinger, Torres is gone. If they miss on Soto,
I don't think they're getting both of those guys. So that would be,
or miss wild. on Bellinger, Torres stays. I think it's more likely right now that the Yankees only get one of their wish list outfielders, so therefore Torres stays for the time being. At the same time, I think if they get those 2 wish list outfielders, they could say, okay, we could trade Torres, get some of the starting pitching that probably cost them to get Soto back for Torres, and then go from there. So I think that's an interesting one. And then listen, Marcus Stroman. Stroman's a fascinating case.
Just cut it there. Just cut it there.
He's burned a lot of bridges. I think Detroit is the right move. Let him go with Javi Baez into obscurity and let nobody else hear from him.
That was personal, Joe. You know it. You know it was personal.
Because nobody in New York, nobody in Boston, nobody in a major market should want this guy on their team. Yes, he's a gamer. He can pitch a little bit, but he is a royal pain in the butt and a terrible for your PR department.
Just because why I got him going to the Astros, because he fits that bill well.
And and I have him to the Angels so he can pair with Anthony Rendon.
Yeah. There you go. Love it. So that is it. I hate that we had to end on a Marcus Stroman note, but that is our predictions for the that is on me. But we'll reveal these predictions later on.
It's not my fault
on our social medias. I'm glad it's not your fault, but if you
flub
the next spot here, it'll be your fault. So what do you got on Twitch and YouTube, Thomas?
Listen, all kinds of things on Twitch and YouTube, mostly Empire State of Baseball. So if you want to interact with us live during the show, best place to do that is either while we are live on Twitch or YouTube. Make sure to download both apps to your phone and just dual screen if you want to pull up, on your laptop, your phone, tablet, and just triple screen it. We'd appreciate that as well. You're going to want to subscribe to Empire State of Baseball. And again, that is the way to interact with us, get your comments read out, on the show, especially once we get into the season next year and Joe makes some ridiculous claims and you want to yell at him. This is the way to yell at Joe, unless you get on the show, in which case you can yell at him, screen to screen, which is also, as I can attest to, a lot of fun.
I got a little.
Maybe we can open up the phone line.
Got a little nugget to leave you guys with. Ron Washington, the new manager of the Angels, was asked if he has been following Ohtani's free agency. And he said, quote, "I don't have much to say about that yet because I don't want to let anything out of the bag," end quote.
Ooh.
Let me tell you something. If he goes back to the Angels, a part of me will respect going back to the team. But let's be real here. If he did this dog and pony show to go back to the Angels,
disappointing.
We're on LeBron 2.0.
I read a thread about that today, that Ohtani, especially with the whole, him wanting to pitch and doing everything, and the Angels essentially giving him full autonomy to do whatever the hell he wants. Other teams might not do that with him, and the Angels might be the only place that he can live out his fantasy land. And granted, he's great at both, but I think some other teams might be wary of him being a starting pitcher moving forward. With the elbow and everything. So I don't know.
Go off into
gonna be
Angels. The Angels are in Disneyland, so might as well.
Well, by the time we have our next scheduled episode, and that's why we threw an asterisk in there, that episode 70 scheduled for our National Baseball Hall of Fame special. We already got the ballots out on X, so make sure to find that ballot. I'll keep reposting it, fill it out, send it back to us. We're registering all the votes, and we're going to have our own ESBBWAA ballot reveal on our show for that episode. January 22nd is a Monday. Now, I say that's the next scheduled episode because if you followed us last year, we had several breaking episodes throughout the offseason where we had a touch on the biggest news piece of the day, whether it was the Aaron Judge signing, whether it was the Carlos Correa sort of signing. We needed to get on the horn for it, and we're going to have episodes like that spread out up until now and then, considering depending on where these guys end up going. So stay tuned with us on our social platforms, and we'll keep you posted on it all for those breaking episodes. But Thomas, let's start the thank you train. What do you got for the faithful?
I'd like to thank Michael King for having some really good starts at the end of the year last year, making him a great candidate to be traded for Juan Soto. Number 22 jersey, hoping to be under the Christmas tree. Make it happen, boys.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of you. Everybody have a Merry Christmas.
Also want to thank Michael King. Very nice of you.
A Happy New Year. Stay safe. Have fun with your families. And we'll see you in the new year, hopefully sooner, with a nice new Christmas present.
Hopefully we do talk to you guys sooner, though. We'll keep you posted on any breaking episodes until now and then. But if not, if that does not happen, have a Happy New Year, a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday Season, and take care.